She was drunk when she admitted she was never attracted to me, so I walked away and let her wake up to the empty life she chose for herself. Alright, so let me give you some background. I'm Jake, 30, male. A regular dude who's always been about hard work and sticking to the plan. Growing up, I was built on the mindset that if you put in the effort, everything would eventually fall into place. I mean, I wasn't exactly living the luxury life. I was grinding day in and day out, trying to make a decent living and build a stable future. I always believed that if you did your best, love and success would come naturally. So I met my love, Olivia, 28, female, in college. She was one of those effortlessly cool people who never seemed to try too hard, but somehow everything just worked for her. She was always laughing, always surrounded by people, always the one who had some crazy last-minute idea to do something fun. I was more of the study hard, get a good job, build a future type. We were different, but it worked, at least for a while. We started dating junior year and I fell hard. She made everything feel exciting. She had this energy that made me feel like I'd been missing out on life before I met her. When we graduated and moved in together, I thought, yeah, this is it. This is the person I'm going to spend my life with. Fast forward a few years, we got married, I had my career set, a decent place, and I was doing everything I could to build something stable for us. Olivia, on the other hand, was still trying to figure things out. She hopped between jobs, tried different hobbies, but never really stuck to anything. That was fine with me. I made enough to support both of us comfortably, and if she needed time to explore what made her happy, I was more than willing to be patient. But at some point, things started to shift. At first it was small. She'd get home later and later, always with a different excuse. Got caught up with work, grabbed a drink with friends, or just lost track of time. I didn't think much of it at first. She was social, she had a lot of friends. I wasn't about to be the guy who freaks out every time his girlfriend stays out late. But then it started happening more often, and the excuses started feeling off, like she was just saying things to say them. I'd ask her how her night was, and she'd give me the most generic answer. It was fine, and then immediately change the subject. Then there were the other things, the way she barely touched me anymore, how she stopped reaching for my hand when we walked anywhere. She used to lean into me when we sat together on the couch. Now she'd sit on the other end, scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging me. I kept telling myself it was just a phase. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe she was feeling off and didn't know how to talk about it. I tried to make things easier for her, brought home her favorite takeout, planned little date nights. Even gave her space when she needed it. But instead of pulling her back, it just pushed her further away. One night I made dinner. Nothing fancy, just something I knew she liked. I texted her asking when she'd be home and she responded, "Be there soon." That was at 7 p.m. By 10 p.m. I was sitting at the table alone, staring at her untouched plate. She finally walked in around midnight, didn't even look surprised that I was still awake. "Oh hey," she said, like it was nothing. She kissed me on the cheek, barely even touching me, then went straight to the bedroom. She didn't ask why I was still up, didn't ask why I looked upset, didn't even acknowledge that she had completely blown me off. That was the night I realized something was seriously wrong. I didn't say anything right away. I just observed, paid attention, the way she smiled at her phone more than she smiled at me, the way she suddenly had plans all the time but never invited me to come along. The way she was always texting someone, and if I glanced over, she'd turn her screen away just slightly. I wasn't stupid. I knew something was going on. So instead of confronting her, I decided to test the waters. I stopped making the first move. I stopped texting her first. I stopped asking her about her day, just to see if she'd ever offer anything on her own. She didn't. It was like she didn't even notice. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. That's when the doubt started creeping in. And I started doubting myself. Where had I gone wrong? I replayed our moments together, searching for the signs I must have missed. Maybe I had been fooling myself from the start, seeing what I wanted to see rather than what was really there. I thought about all her little comments, the ones I used to dismiss with a smile. "You're such a planner, Jake." Each word carried a weight I hadn't felt before. "You always play it safe." Was that disappointment in her voice when she said, "Don't you ever just want to do something crazy?" I used to laugh at those, but now they felt like warnings I couldn't ignore. I'd offered her stability, making sure she felt secure, giving her a future mapped out in careful steps. I'd been so certain these were gifts, but somehow the more I gave, the less she seemed to care, and I couldn't understand why. What was I doing wrong? What was missing? Why wasn't I enough? I knew I needed to do something. If there was even a chance of fixing this, I had to act fast. It took me a while, but I finally decided I needed to stop sitting around waiting for things to magically fix themselves. I planned a weekend trip, just the two of us, a cabin up in the mountains. No distractions, no work, no friends, just us. I figured if I got her away from everything, from her phone, from whatever was pulling her attention, we could reset. She agreed, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled. No, oh, that sounds amazing, or that's so sweet of you. Just a half-hearted nod, like I'd told her I was taking the car in for an oil change. That night I packed our bags. Hers was basically empty, no effort at all, like she was preparing for a weekend of being held hostage rather than a romantic getaway. I ignored it again. The next morning we hit the road. The drive was about 4 hours, and she spent at least 3 of them glued to her phone. I tried talking, asked about work, her friends, even the dumb reality show she'd been obsessed with a few months ago. Yeah, she'd say, that was it. No follow-ups, no questions for me, just the sound of her scrolling. I told myself she was just tired, that I was overthinking it. The cabin itself was nice, secluded, surrounded by nothing but trees and quiet. I had pictured us unwinding, having deep conversations, maybe even fixing whatever was broken. But she walked in, barely glanced around, and said, "Do we have service out here?" Not, "Wow, this is nice," or "This is a great idea, Jake," just, "Do we have service?" I should have turned around and driven straight home. Instead, I forced a smile and said, "Yeah, but it's spotty. Probably a good thing, right?" She didn't answer. We spent the day hiking, at least I did. She trailed behind, distracted, barely looking at the view. I tried to hold her hand, but she kept adjusting her backpack strap. We finally got to this beautiful overlook, one of those places where the world stretches out in front of you like a painting. I turned to say something to her, to share the moment. She was on her phone. That was it. That was the moment I knew this wasn't a phase. She wasn't distant because of work, or stress, or needing space. She had already checked out, and I was the idiot still trying to make things work. That night we sat by the fire. I made dinner. Something simple, grilled chicken and some potatoes. She picked at it, barely eating, staring into the flames like they held the answers to her entire life. I sat there eating in silence, stealing glances at her while she barely touched hers. The space between us felt heavier than ever, filled with everything unsaid. I wanted to ask her what was wrong, to finally get the truth out in the open, but something in her posture, in the way she avoided my eyes, told me I wouldn't like the answer. So instead I just kept the night moving, offering her another drink, watching as she took it without hesitation. She poured another glass, then another, watching as she swayed slightly. She looked like she was fully in that drunk stage where everything came out raw, unfiltered, like she had been holding it in for way too long. Then, out of nowhere, she let out a sharp, almost mocking laugh. It wasn't the kind of laugh I was used to hearing from her. It wasn't warm or playful. It was bitter. "You want to know something funny?" She slurred, tilting her head at me. "I've never been attracted to you. I just pretended." She laughed. I frowned, setting my glass down. "What does that mean?" She smirked, swirling her drink in slow circles. "You try so damn hard, Jake. Always have." She shook her head like she felt sorry for me, like it was going to change anything. My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand, her gaze hazy but locked onto me. "You think being a good guy is enough? That being stable, dependable, nice makes you someone I should want?" She let out another soft laugh, like I was clueless. "But that's never what I wanted." Something cold crept into my stomach. "Olivia." She waved a hand, dismissing whatever I was about to say. "You know, I used to tell myself I'd learn to love it, that I'd wake up one day and be happy with the quiet life, a guy who takes care of me, plans our future, never lets Mujay worry about anything." She sighed, rubbing her temple. "But God, Jake, do you know how boring that sounds?" I didn't say anything. I just stared at her, my heart feeling cold. It was like I was watching a stranger, someone I had never really known. I felt that the woman in front of me wasn't the person I'd spent years loving. She was someone who had been waiting for the moment to tear me down, and now that she had, she wasn't even sorry. She just kept talking, casually throwing away everything we'd built like it was some phase she had outgrown. I wanted to feel something, anger, sadness, anything, but all I felt was numb. She was too lost in her own thoughts. I need excitement, someone who keeps me on my toes, Someone who doesn't follow all the rules, who doesn't ask me how my day was like it actually matters. She shook her head. I need someone different. I sat there staring at her, feeling like I had just been kicked in the chest. Different, I repeated, my voice hollow. She nodded, completely oblivious to the damage she was doing. Someone with a little edge, someone who's a little reckless, who doesn't always do the right thing. She blinked at me, almost like she was finally seeing me for what I was. You're too safe. There it was. I had spent years breaking my back trying to be the best possible boyfriend, the guy who provided, who supported, who made sure she never had to struggle the way I did growing up. And here she was telling me that none of it ever mattered, that it never would. I swallowed hard, my jaw clenching. And you're just telling me this now? She shrugged. Guess I don't feel like pretending anymore. I leaned back in my chair, not saying anything. She stared at me, waiting for… what? I wasn't sure. An argument, a meltdown, maybe some desperate plea for her to stay. But I wasn't giving her that. I wasn't giving her anything. I nodded once. All right. Her face twisted in confusion. That's it? I exhaled slowly, barely looking at her. What else is there? My voice was flat, detached. You've made yourself clear. I'm not what you want. So okay. She blinked, like she wasn't expecting me to take it so easily, like she wanted a reaction. At that moment, I doubted if she was really drunk or just acting to be. I leaned back, staring at her with a level calmness I knew would unsettle her. I'm not going to grovel, Olivia. I'm not going to change who I am to fit whatever fantasy you've built in your head. I tilted my head slightly, and I sure as hell am not going to sit here and apologize for treating you right. She was about to say something, but then she hesitated. She looked unsure. I pushed my chair back and stood up, moving slow and deliberate. I'm going to bed. She didn't try to stop me. The signs were pretty obvious when I thought about it. She dodged my calls at night. There was this guy's name that kept popping up, and suddenly she was always busy with plans I wasn't part of. I could have played detective, sure, could have checked her phone or asked around, but sitting there in the dark I realized I just didn't care. Weird, right? No need to chase answers or try to win her back, nothing. Just empty. By morning, my mind was made up. She just didn't know it yet. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She got up, stretched, yawned, like it was any other morning, like she hadn't just blown up our entire relationship the night before. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her move around the cabin, waiting to see if she'd say anything. She didn't. Finally, I asked, "Do you remember what you said last night?" She paused. I was drunk, Jake. I don't remember much. I saw it in her eyes. She remembered every single word. She just wasn't brave enough to own it. I could have pushed. I could have said, "Don't lie to me." I could have told her I wasn't stupid, that I had known something was wrong for months. But I didn't. Instead, I just nodded, let her think I bought it. And that's when I made my choice. I wasn't going to fight for her anymore. I wasn't going to beg her to love me. If she wanted more, let her have it. Let her see what life was like without me carrying the relationship on my back. So I started pulling away. No more good morning texts. No more asking about her day. No more planning dates or bringing home her favorite snacks from the store. I didn't get mad. I didn't get cold. I just stopped. At first, I don't think she noticed, or maybe she did and was relieved. But then, slowly, I saw the shift. She started reaching for me in small ways, touching my arm while she talked, sitting next to me on the couch instead of at the other end. She laughed at my jokes a little too loudly, even the dumb ones that never got a reaction before. She wasn't doing it because she missed me. She was doing it because she felt me slipping away. I wasn't the one holding on anymore. A week later, we got back home, and I could tell she was antsy. She'd glance at me when she thought I wasn't looking, bite her lip like she wanted to say something but couldn't figure out how. Then one night, I caught her staring at me. We were both on our phones, but she wasn't scrolling. She was watching me. "You've been different," she finally said. I glanced at her. "Yeah?" "Yeah." She hesitated. "Is everything okay?" I shrugged. "I'm fine." She didn't like that answer. I could tell by the way her fingers tensed around the edge of the blanket. She expected me to ask her what was wrong, to pull her close, to tell her I loved her, to beg her to tell me what was on her mind. I didn't. That's when I knew I had flipped the game. Few days later, I started noticing little things. She'd dress up more even when she had nowhere to go. She'd ask me what I was doing, where I was going, who I was with. One night I mentioned I was grabbing dinner with my friend Ethan, and she perked up. "Oh, where at?" I shrugged. "Not sure yet." She hesitated. "I could come with you." That was new. She had spent the last 6 months avoiding plans with me like it was a second job. I just smiled. "Nah, just guys tonight." She forced a laugh, but I saw the way her jaw clenched. She was unraveling. One night I forgot my phone in the living room. When I woke up, I saw she had gone through it. I wasn't even mad, I just found it hilarious. She was digging for something, anything, to confirm that I had checked out. She wanted a reason to feel like she was still in control. She didn't have one. And then the whole thing blew up in the most predictable way possible. Turns out she'd been seeing someone the entire time. Not just a hookup or a drunk mistake or whatever. Nah, full-on dating behind my back for months. The funny part? When it all came out, she hit me with the classic, "I never found you attractive, you're boring" line. Like, seriously? After 8 years? Low. I almost laughed at how desperate that excuse was. She was just trying to cover her tracks, but she'd gotten so sloppy with hiding everything that it was kind of embarrassing to watch. Not going to lie, though, it didn't even hurt. I was just done. But she must have thought she had me fooled, that I was still blindly in love with her because she stopped covering her tracks. Maybe she was too focused on me pulling away. Maybe she got too comfortable, but one night she left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. And there it was, her messages. I don't know why I looked. Maybe I already knew what I'd find. There were texts from him, not just recent ones, but weeks, months of conversations. I scrolled, feeling absolutely nothing, just reading the words like I was scanning an email I didn't care about. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing. Does he suspect anything?" I took a deep breath, closed the laptop, and went to bed. I didn't wake her up. I didn't confront her. I didn't do anything, because I had already decided what I was going to do. The next morning I got up like it was a normal day, took a shower, made coffee, acted like I wasn't about to completely cut her out of my life. Then I called my lawyer. By the time she got out of bed, I had already started the process. She had no idea, and I wasn't going to warn her, because I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to wake up one day and realize she had lost me before she even knew she needed to fight for me. She wanted more? She was about to get exactly that. It didn't take long before I found out the truth for sure. A few days after I contacted my lawyer, Ethan called me. Now, Ethan's not the type to get involved in drama. He's the kind of guy who minds his business, stays in his lane. So when he called me out of nowhere, sounding hesitant, I already knew something was wrong. "Jake." His voice was cautious, like he was debating whether to say anything at all. "I don't know how to tell you this, but I saw Olivia last night. She was with some guy at a bar downtown, and, they weren't just talking." I closed my eyes, exhaled. "Where? The junction?" He said, "Near the back by the booths." I felt nothing. No anger, no shock, no gut-wrenching pain. I think I had already known. The texts, the late nights, the way she started treating me like an afterthought, I had known. Ethan was just confirming what my gut had been telling me for months. "Jake, you okay, man?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yeah, I'm good." "You want me to do anything?" "Nah," I said. "I got it." And I did. I already knew what I had to do. That night, I made up some excuse about working late and told Olivia I wouldn't be home for dinner. She barely reacted, just muttered okay and went back to her phone. At around 9 p.m., I parked my car 2 blocks away from the junction and waited. I wasn't sure how long I'd be sitting there, but I had a feeling she wouldn't make me wait too long. Sure enough, at 9:30 she walked out of our apartment building. She wasn't dressed up like she would be for a night out with friends. No high heels, no fancy dress, just jeans, a crop sweater, and that bag she only ever took when she didn't plan on coming home right away. I followed her. I just needed proof. Not close enough to be obvious, but enough to keep her in sight. She walked fast, like she had somewhere important to be. I already knew where she was going, but I needed to see it for myself. When she walked into the junction, I stayed back, waited a few minutes before following. I kept to the shadows, stayed near the entrance, just watching. And there he was. The guy was the complete opposite of me, where I was clean cut. He was rough around the edges, tattoos up his arms, a cocky smirk. The kind of guy who looked like he had never had to work for anything in his life. And the way she looked at him, damn, she had never looked at me like that. She slid into the booth, leaned into him immediately like she had been waiting for this all day. He put his arm around her without hesitation, and she melted into him. I stood there for a second, just watching, letting it sink in. Then I took out my phone, snapped a picture, and walked out. No confrontation, just cold, hard proof. By the time I got back to my car, I had already sent the picture to my lawyer, start the paperwork. The next few days, I barely spoke to Olivia. I wasn't sure if she noticed at first. She was so caught up in whatever fantasy she was living in that she didn't seem to register how quiet I had gone. I pulled back hard, stopped checking in, started coming home late without explanation. She kept pushing for answers, but I just gave her silence. But the real switch flipped when I quietly moved most of our shared money into a separate account. Nothing illegal, just protecting what was mine. That's when her whole act changed. Suddenly she was all sweet and clingy, like someone had flipped a switch. The fake I love you started dropping like confetti. She was planning date nights, talking about vacations, even suggested this romantic getaway. It was almost funny watching her scramble. I turned down every single thing. Then came the morning she checked our shared account. The panic in her eyes when she realized most of the money was gone, priceless. She tried to play it cool, but I could see her hands shaking while she frantically checked her phone. See, I knew her shopping habits, the weekly spa treatments, those emergency shopping sprees, the fancy lunches with her new friends. That was all about to hit a wall. She kept shooting these nervous glances my way, probably waiting for me to bring it up. I didn't. Just sipped my coffee and read the news like it was any other morning. A week later, I had the divorce papers ready. I came home, found her on the couch curled up in her usual spot, staring at her phone like the screen held the answers to all her problems. Maybe she was waiting for him to text back. Maybe she was hoping this was all just a bad dream. She didn't even look up when I walked in. I stood there for a second, watching. She looked smaller somehow, like she had finally started to feel the weight of everything she had. Done. Like she knew what was coming. I pulled the envelope from my pocket and dropped it on the coffee table. The slap of paper against wood made her flinch. She slowly set her phone down and reached for it. As soon as she flipped it over and read the words at the top, her entire body stiffened. She swallowed hard, looking up at me with wide, panicked eyes. "Jake," her voice cracked. This isn't necessary." I let out a dry laugh. "Yeah? And why is that?" She shook her head, grasping for words, for something, anything that would make me back down. "We can work this out," she finally said, forcing a weak smile. "We don't need to do anything drastic." "Drastic?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Like spending years with someone you were never actually into?" She flinched hard. "I never said that," she whispered. I crossed my arms, tilting my head. "You did, actually. You just don't remember, or at least you pretend you don't." She shook her head. "Jake, I was drunk, you know that." "Yeah, but drunk words, those come from somewhere." Her eyes darted away, staring at the papers. I sighed, taking a step closer. "Tell me, Olivia," I said, voice quiet but firm. "How long have you known?" She looked up at me, confused. "What? That I wasn't your type," I clarified. "How long have you known?" Her mouth opened, then shut. She knew there was no right answer to that. Finally, she let out a shaky breath. "It's not that simple." I laughed, a real one this time, because of course that's what she'd say. "No, Olivia," I said, shaking my head. "It actually is that simple." Tears welled up in her eyes, her fingers gripping the envelope so tightly that the edges started to crumple. I didn't let her finish. "I gave you everything," I said, voice steady. "I loved you. I built a life around you. I thought I was making you happy, and the entire time you were looking at me like I was a backup plan. Like I was safe." She let out a soft sob, but I didn't stop. "You told me you needed more," I continued, watching her crumble in front of me. "Well, congratulations, you got it. Now you get to go find whatever thrill you've been chasing." She shook her head, tears falling freely now. "Jake, please. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." "No. You made a choice," I corrected, over and over again. She wiped at her face. "I don't know why I did it," she whispered. The last piece of whatever hold she had on me just fell away. "You didn't ruin everything," I said simply. "You just proved that I deserve better." She choked on a sob, pressing a hand over her mouth. I grabbed my keys from the counter and walked toward the door. Just before stepping out, I turned back one last time. "You wanted excitement," I said, my voice calm, final. "Go find it." And then I left. The sound of her sobbing behind the closed door better than any therapy session. After all this chaos, I tried to focus on myself, while she did exactly what I expected, acted like she was thriving. Social media was her stage, pictures of nights out, fancy drinks, big smiles, the kind of thing people post when they need to convince the world and themselves that everything is fine. She wanted everyone to believe she had moved on effortlessly, that she was living her best life without me. For a second, I almost fell for it, almost let myself think maybe she really was happy. But life has a way of catching up. I heard through mutual friends that the guy she left me for, he ghosted her completely, didn't even have the decency to break it off like an adult, just stopped answering texts, unfollowed her, disappeared into thin air. The thrill she had been chasing? Gone. And her job? She had always been coasting by, half-assing her work, relying on charm and excuses to get through. But eventually people stopped buying the act. She got laid off. Something about downsizing or restructuring. But everyone knew what it really meant. They just didn't need someone who wasn't actually doing the work. The friends? Well, the ones she partied with stuck around for a little while, but when the money ran low, when she wasn't the fun one anymore, they started disappearing too, one by one. The people she had prioritized over me? They weren't there when she actually needed them. For me, it's been 8 months since everything went down, and honestly, life's been pretty epic. Moved into this sweet apartment downtown. Turns out when you're not funding someone else's shopping addiction, you can afford nice things, lol. Got back into rock climbing and started seeing this amazing girl from my gym, Sarah. Gym girl is just different. She actually gets excited about the little things we do together. Last week we just grabbed cheap tacos and walked around the city for hours, and it was better than any fancy dinner I ever had with my ex. The best part? She makes her own money and pays for her own stuff. Wild concept, right? The funniest part? The ex tried hitting me up last week. Hey, can we talk? I just stared at my phone and laughed. Didn't even bother opening it. According to mutual friends, she's been couch surfing after her boyfriend, the one she cheated with, kicked her out. Guess the grass wasn't greener after all. Looking back, my only regret is wasting 8 years on someone who saw me as an ATM with legs. But hey, sometimes you need to go through the bad to appreciate the good, right? Edit. Holy crap, this blew up. Thanks for all the awards and support, guys. And to everyone asking, yes, Sarah knows the whole story, and no, I'm not giving the ex a second chance. Some bridges are meant to stay burned. Edit 2 for those asking about the house, kept it, sold it, made a profit, living my best life. Sometimes karma just hits different.